President Trump delivered his speech to the United Nations General Assembly yesterday in New York City. Speaking from the main hall at UN headquarters, he addressed world leaders and delegates from more than 190 countries. The remarks touched on global security, trade, and climate policy. So I'm going to do something here and just analyze his speech in detail, I think in greater detail than you've ever seen before, or certainly for this speech. There's a lot of criticism about how the media covers Trump. Those on the right say, oh, he's quoted out of context and the liberal media is mean to him. A lot of people on the left say, and liberals and centrists say, Trump says crazy, bizarre stuff, and the media is guilty of sane washing, making insane comments appear to be sane. Now, I've heard a lot of chatter about this speech, but I wanted to give you a fresh perspective, a fresh set of eyes. I'd be happy to get your opinion too. You can post your opinions, but I'm going to analyze this speech at two different levels. From a purely technician standpoint, a public speaking tips standpoint, I'll tell you what I think he's doing well and what he's not doing well. And then we will analyze it from a substantive messaging standpoint to see what messages resonate, what messages seem to be connecting with audience, and what messages seem to be off or confusing to people. So with that said, let's dive right in. Other than the first 5 seconds, I've not watched any of this. I'm here today not to grind an axe. I am a sane, sensible centrist, and I'm giving you objective analysis based on my 40 years of working with political leaders and business leaders around the world communicate more. So let's take a look right now at this presentation, and together we can figure out what exactly we think of this. So the beginning will play now.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciated.
So he'll mention this in just a minute. This is the one part I've seen. His teleprompter wasn't working. I give him credit for not going like this and not simply panicking, because what a lot of humans would do is, oh no, now what? So I give him credit for looking somewhat poised. The president is not known for being a smiler in general, so I won't fault him for not smiling the way most politicians do. But he remained relatively composed. He didn't turn around, like, look at his face like, where's my speech? Yet. And he did exactly what you're supposed to do, which is go to plan B. He opened the prepared remarks that were written down in front of him. He opened it up knowing that was his plan B. And he or someone on his staff had the foresight to get that speech up on the stage, up on the lectern, so he didn't have to be lugging it around. So I give him credit for all of those things.
And I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say.
So he's kind of scrambling around. How do I say something? Yeah, it's a little bit of his humming, but not bad. I don't fault him for how he's coming across here. The best advice, I would say, don't talk about it. Now, this has happened to every major political leader at some point. Famously, Bill Clinton was giving a speech to a joint session of Congress, and they had the speech from the last year in there. And he was able, because of his memory, to just speak from memory for about the first 15 minutes until they got it. He didn't talk about it. He didn't complain. Now, you could say this is part of Trump being on brand. He's starting off complaining about something. It doesn't seem to hurt him the way it does other politicians. In general, I would recommend not calling attention to the fact that your teleprompter isn't working. Just do the best you can. The teleprompter is for you, the speaker. No one else really cares about it. But we're only a couple of seconds in. We have a long way to go.
That whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
Okay, he gets a laugh. Anytime you can get a laugh from your audience, especially, this is considered arguably a hostile audience for him, it's kind of a good thing because it loosens people up. It's your audience communicating back with you. It goes from a monologue to a dialogue. And in general, that is a good thing. It shows a confidence, the ability to speak off the cuff, to think in the moment, which in general is a good thing for speakers, and audiences reward that. And it is a sign of confidence. I'm being fair here, folks. So some of you are not going to like me saying something positive about Trump because you don't like his policies. I'm not asking you to change your opinion. I'm also going to look at negatives too. Some of you are not going to like my technical analysis of what he's doing because you like his policy. Both sides are going to have to grow up. Now, what do I not like about what he just did? It's the first thing out of his mouth. He's punching down. Here's a guy who is a billionaire now, at least from all the activities of the last 9 months. And he's basically saying, I'm coming after you if you're this low paid, probably minimum wage, probably an intern who's back in a broom closet somewhere, twisting something, and the internet went down or a wire got pulled. So it sounds very much like a bully. Now you could make the case, hey, that's Trump being on brand. But in the United Nations, when so many countries have a dim view and already see the United States as the big bully, to be seeing the leader of the United States come out, first thing out of his mouth is he's essentially trying to get some kid fired. It also reminds people, okay, here's the guy who is known for stiffing his contractors, stiffing his own employees, treating people poorly, abusing them. And the first thing out of his mouth is, this guy's in big trouble because he made me look bad. So I have to take some points off for that. But again, it's a mixed bag because this is Trump being consistent with his own brand. Okay, now that's good timing. He was getting laughter from the audience. He just looked calm. He just looked relaxed. He didn't step on it. He didn't say, humana, what am I going to do now? He just stopped, a little bit of a grin, gave the audience a chance to react and reflect on what he said.
Hello, Madam First Lady. Thank you very much for being here.
So he does laugh a little. He chuckles at the situation. I give him credit for that. So many of us who don't watch a lot of live TV, when we think of Trump, we think of this humorless, scowling person, angry, spewing hatred, and there he is laughing, smiling, saying hello to people. So it does set things up in a little more positive context than a lot of times when we see just the sound bites on the evening news or on your favorite podcast.
Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, First Lady of the United States.
So now he's clearly reading, and he's reading in a fairly comfortable way. There are those who have a theory that he can't really read. That's not true. He's clearly reading his script here in a comfortable way. And in general, I'm not a fan of speeches starting with a boring way of thank you, so-and-so and so-and-so, but it's the United Nations. That is how people do it. It's very much part of a formal structure, which would be odd not to do. So he is showing some respect for tradition. I'll give him credit for that.
Distinguished delegates, ambassadors, and world leaders. 6 years have passed since I last stood in this grand hall and addressed a world that was prosperous and at peace in my first term. Since that day, the guns of war have shattered the peace I forged.
Now, you can clearly see that this is not how he normally speaks. We're typically used to seeing him speak without a teleprompter and without a written speech. He goes on riffs and he speaks from seemingly whatever idea pops into his head. He's now reading. This does bring down his energy level. It does make him flatter. Flatter, I said, not fatter. It makes him sound flatter. His voice is flat, and it ruins the eye contact. He's also keeping his head tilted in sort of the same place. I recommend, if you have to glance, that's okay, but move your body a little. Sort of lean in. You want the movement to have some variety to it rather than just one spot looking down, up, down, up. Let's look more.
On two continents, an era of calm and stability gave way to one of the great crises of our time. And here in the United States, 4 years of...
I believe it's pronounced crises, but that's a minor quibble.
Weakness, lawlessness, and radicalism under the last administration delivered our nation into a repeated set of disaster.
So this is the part totally on brand with Trump, but to say the president of his own country was essentially destroying the nation and we were so awful. This is where I would suspect out of representatives from 190 nations, you saw about 189 sets of eyeballs rolling. Like, I can't believe he's wasting our time trashing his own country, the leadership of his own country, in a way that no one here really thinks is accurate. Let's take a look more.
1 year ago, our country was in deep trouble. But today, just 8 months into my administration, we are the hottest country anywhere in the world, and there is no other country even close.
So, again, to his audience, the world audience, world leaders, ambassadors, presidents of countries, they're hearing this, and I believe their reaction is, why is this clown wasting our time? A year ago, the United States was in pretty good shape. Inflation was back down again. The stock market was at an all-time high. Unemployment was low. Things were pretty good in the United States. Businesses could make plans in their future because they weren't worried about tariffs changing every day. So he already told a big lie about how America was horrible a year ago. And arguably, you could make a case that some version of that message is entirely appropriate when you're a candidate. When you're a candidate, you have to make the case that the other people in power have been less than ideal. Otherwise, why change? But you're now president of a country speaking to the entire world, and to try to score cheap partisan political points against your enemies, as he calls them, who aren't even in the room, seems wildly inappropriate. And then to say now we're the envy of the world, well, no, the United States has lost prestige. More and more countries in the world are saying, we want to deal with China. We want to deal with India more. We want to emigrate to Canada and do our startup. So it's just demonstrably, factually incorrect. And right now he is sort of hamstrung because he's still in that awkward stage of trying to figure out, am I going to get my teleprompter back? Am I going to have to read this thing the whole time? How am I really going to do this? So he's navigating that. It's bringing down his natural showmanship. Make no mistake about it. This guy is a great showman. He's great at performing in front of cameras and speaking in front of cameras. Arguably his greatest talent. That's how he rose to fame and fortune. It wasn't the real estate savvy. It was being on TV for The Apprentice. So let's watch more. We're only 2 minutes and 18 seconds in. We have a long way to go, folks.
America is blessed with the strongest economy, the strongest borders, the strongest military, the strongest friendships, and the strongest spirit of any nation on the face of the earth. This is indeed the golden age.
Okay, so he wants to say his country's great. I don't think anyone begrudges him that. To say you have the strongest borders now, and for the previous 4 years you were saying the weakest borders, and really not much has changed, is going to strike a lot of people as a bit of a stretch. But for a president of a country to stand up and just say, here's good things I like about my country, is all fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Of America. We are rapidly reversing the economic calamity we inherited from the previous administration, including ruinous price.
So saying he inherited an economic calamity from the previous administration. There's just no sane economist in the world who is not on the payroll of the administration who believes that. The economy, by every objective measure, was in great shape a year ago. Now, you can always say you want to run the economy a little differently. You could say, I want a different tax structure. I want to reduce spending here. There's nothing wrong with that. But to say the United States had a ruined economy and things were calamitous just sounds crazy to a lot of fair-minded, objective analysts. And for that matter, fair-minded people. And for that matter, anyone who isn't already a huge super fan. I'm going into this with the premise of anytime you give a speech, yes, you want to say things that appeal to your base, your supporters, but you also want to reach people who have an open mind and people you're trying to influence. It's very difficult to influence people if they're listening to you saying, why is this guy telling me a lie? And why is he telling that lie? And why is he telling another lie? At some point, you can destroy your credibility. Let's watch more.
Increases and record-setting inflation. Inflation like we've never had before.
Inflation like we've never had before? Well, President Trump is not that far away from 80. He's certainly old enough to remember a lot of times when inflation was much worse in the United States. And he's talking to a bunch of people around the world. Very few nations had lower inflation than what the United States did last year. So it's just not adding up on a factual basis.
Under my leadership, energy costs are down, gasoline prices are down, grocery prices are down, mortgage rates are down, and inflation has been defeated. The only thing that
to say inflation has been defeated is just an absurdity. Again, there's simply no reputable economist anywhere in the world who's not on the Trump payroll who thinks inflation has been defeated. In fact, there's a lot of signs that inflation has gone way up because of these tariffs. Certainly in certain sectors, certain industries, there have been inflationary prices in the last 3 months and the last 6 months. So to say there's no inflation, by the way, you don't want zero inflation. The target from the Fed is 2%, and we are in fact above that.
it's up is the stock market. It's just hit a record high. In fact, hit a record high 48 times in the last short period of time. Growth is surging, manufacturing.
All true, but also true under the previous administration. So what's the point? Now, he's still getting warmed up. The president is still inside thinking, I'm going to get that guy who was supposed to be running the teleprompter, because he does not like reading text from paper. He frankly would much prefer to just speak without any notes or teleprompter, but his aide said, this is a special occasion. We really need to have some structure to this. And he consented. But what you could say watching him here, very different from when you see him at rallies at big stadiums with throngs of people shouting their approval. This is kind of, for him, a very boring speech. And you can tell it was written by staff, putting in a lot of talking points. Let's watch more.
Is booming. The stock market, as I said, is doing better than it's ever done. And all of you in this room benefit by that, almost everybody. And importantly, workers' wages are rising at the fastest pace.
He kind of sounds down and bored. He kind of sounds bored by his own words. So uncharacteristically for Trump, he's more monotone than usual. Again, because he's not really used to reading a long written speech. And it's bringing down his energy level and his tone.
In more than 60 years. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? In 4 years of President Biden, we had less than $1 trillion of new investment into the United States. In just 8 months since I took office, we have secured commitments and money already paid for $17 trillion.
Okay, nobody believes that. It's been fact-checked by numerous reputable organizations. Again, I haven't seen this speech until now. I'm looking at it for the first time. But that's one of many facts that has been checked. Simply not true. And even Trump's biggest admirers, his biggest fans, will concede, he just makes up facts to say what he wants to make himself look good. He essentially copped to that in the very first book he wrote, The Art of the Deal, where he talks about, you have to take creative license to sell a concept. And if it means exaggerating, you just do it. That has always been his philosophy, and it appears to be coming through loud and clear in the speech as well.
Think of it, 4 years, less than $1 trillion, 8 months, much more than $17 trillion is being invested in the United States, and it's now pouring in from all parts of the world. We've implemented the largest tax cuts in American history and the largest regulation cuts in American history.
Well, it is true. He has had some big tax cuts, and he's definitely cut regulation. Whether that's a good thing is very much up to debate.
Making this once and again the best country on earth to do business. And many of the people in this room are investing in America, and it's turned out to be an awfully good investment during this 8-month period.
At this point, he seems so bored that he might fall asleep. Now, stick with me. We're going to dissect this entire speech. And if you're just joining us live now, this is Filtered with TJ Walker. I'm your host. And what we do in this show is analyze the top news, technology, and culture stories of the day and filter it through the lens of communication skills and personal development skills. And today we're doing a special edition, in-depth analysis of President Trump's speech to the United Nations this week.
In my first term, I built the greatest economy in the history of the world. We had the best economy.
The greatest economy in the history of the world. Fun fact, more Americans lost their jobs in President Trump's first term than under any president since Herbert Hoover, going back 100 years. So again, it's just factual nonsense
ever, history of the world. And I'm doing the same thing again, but this time it's actually much bigger and even better. The numbers far surpass my record-setting first term. On our southern border, we have successfully repelled a colossal invasion. And for the last 4 months, and that's 4 months in a row, the number of illegal aliens admitted.
Now you can see the audience there. It's the United Nations. People are being very respectful. They're not going out of their way, rolling their eyes. You see people with headsets on, translations. You can get a lot of different language simultaneously translated there in the United Nations, as you would imagine.
And entering our country has been zero. Hard to believe, because if you look back just a year ago, it was millions and millions of people pouring in from all over the world, from prisons, from mental institutions, drug dealers, all over the world they came.
So he's saying millions of criminals and drug dealers were coming in every day in the United States, and now it's zero. Again, no serious person believes that. It's simply not true. It's not credible. And I can tell you, the audience in that room, inside, they were in fact rolling their eyes.
They just poured into our country with the ridiculous open border policy of the Biden administration.
And some of them came in because the Biden administration struck a deal with Republicans in the Senate and came up with a deal for comprehensive reform on immigration. And it was about to pass. And then Trump told the Republicans, oh, I don't want you to solve any problems regarding immigration while Biden's in power. I don't want him to get credit. So just vote no for anything they are doing. It conveniently neglects that fact. Unique Tech writes, global leaders were listening, but were they buying it? I am not seeing any signs of any message here that would resonate with any global leader I'm aware of, but let's take a look.
The message is very simple. If you come illegally into the United States, you're going to jail, or you're going back to where you came from, or perhaps even further than that. You know what that means. I want to thank the country of El Salvador for the successful.
So again, it's sort of back to sounding like the mob boss. I'm going to rub you out. Send you back, worse than that, worse than jail, worse than being deported. He's essentially saying, I'll chop off your head, apparently. That's a way to sound really classy and elegant at a refined place like the United Nations.
A professional job they've done in receiving and jailing so many criminals that entered our country. And it was under the previous administration that the number became record-setting, and they're all being taken out. We have no choice. And other countries have no choice because other countries are in the exact same situation with immigration.
He's certainly correct that a lot of nations, especially in Europe, are grappling with this issue, but also, a place like Lebanon. There's a lot of nations around the world where leaders are trying to figure out, how do we deal with the influx of migrants, refugees, people fleeing oppressive regimes? So it is definitely a big issue, and it is an issue that is fueling a lot of anti-immigration politicians in democracies around the world.
It's destroying your country, and you have to do something about it. On the world stage, America is respected.
So that's a part of, I won't say that's factually incorrect, but there's honest, legitimate debate, because there are a lot of Americans and a lot of economists and a lot of business people who say, no, we want a lot of immigrants. We want more people coming to this country. We want them coming and working, because immigrants are a lot more likely to come work than the average American who, is a stay-at-home son these days, or retire when they're 50 or things like that. Migrants come and work. They bring in money. They bring in consumers. They have families who then attend schools and then make money and pay taxes. Part of the beauty of our American economy has been it's constantly expanding. Well, if you factor out immigrants, our population is not expanding anymore. Too many people are like me, and they only have one kid, and it's not making our country grow anymore. But our economy has grown because our population has grown, because we have historically and recently let in a lot of the most talented, hardworking, ambitious people in the world. And a lot of that is coming to an end.
Again, like it has never been respected before. You think about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or 1 year ago, we were a laughingstock all over the world at the NATO.
America has been a laughingstock before, but I guarantee you, if you took a poll in the room there, they would say it's been a laughingstock for the last 9 months. and it was a laughingstock on January 6, 2020. But if you took a poll in that room, nobody there thought Joe Biden was a laughingstock. They might have thought, oh, he's kind of old. Can't believe they're letting him run for re-election. Doesn't he want to retire? They had all sorts of, no one thought he was perfect, but nobody really thought the administration running the government from 2021 to 2025, January, was a laughingstock. Again, it's just hyperbole. Hyperbole can be an effective rhetorical technique, but when you use it again and again and again, all the time about everything, you can destroy credibility with your audience.
Summit in June, virtually all NATO members formally committed to increase defense spending at my request from 2% to 5% of GDP, making our alliance far stronger and more powerful than it was ever before. In May, I traveled to the Middle East to visit my friends and rebuild our partnerships in the Gulf and those valued relationships with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE and other countries are now, I believe,
so this has to be said
than ever before.
And I'm being fair and objective here. Trump is a good speaker when he's on camera and he doesn't have a script and he's not reading a teleprompter. He emotionally connects with audiences in ways few politicians in the history of this country have ever done. He was a top-rated TV star, not because he was baking or dancing or cooking, but because of how he spoke. So he is genuinely a gifted communicator, but he's a horrible reader. He's just looking down. There's no movement. His voice is flat. His voice is bored, monotone. He sounds bored out of his mind. He sounds like he would like to say to an assistant, can I just email this speech and can we go someplace else? Can we go shopping at Nordstrom's or Lord & Taylor's? Can we do anything other than that? He sounds bored. And when you're a speaker, this is a common problem. It's especially common for people who are reading a speech and they're not good at reading a speech. You have to sound like you really believe what you're saying and to be a captivating speaker. And again, I'm being fair here. Trump normally, when he's not reading a speech, does genuinely sound like he believes it. He's totally bought into his message. But here he just seems like he's going through a laundry list that someone else wrote for him.
My administration has negotiated one historic trade deal after another, including with the United Kingdom, the European Union, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and many.
So this is where a lot of people in the audience are rolling their eyes. Like, you've gotten promises, you've got people saying, okay, we'll build a hotel for you if you don't give a big tariff on us. A lot of this is just completely BS. And by most accounts, people around the world hate all these tariffs, but they're not the only ones. This is now where pollsters like Nate Silver and pollster aggregators like Silver are saying Trump is most vulnerable here in the United States. People hate these tariffs because they see it quite rightly as a tax. It's a tax that's increasing cost for everyone. And it makes it extraordinarily difficult to conduct trade, to know how to plan. And a lot of Trump supporters, like all these soybean farmers in the upper Midwest, are suddenly seeing they've got no one to sell their product to because they're used to selling millions and millions of dollars of soybeans to China. And China's saying, we don't need you anymore. So there's a lot of contentiousness about these tariffs. He's trying to spin this audience. It's not working well.
Likewise, in a period of just 7 months, I have ended 7 unendable wars. They said they were unendable. You're never going to.
So I've ended 7 unendable wars. Okay, nobody believes that. There's not. I guarantee you could go around that room and inject every person in there with sodium pentothal and say, do you believe Trump has ended 7 wars? Anyone who says, or they would all say, no, they simply don't believe it. It's not credible. There's no one with one scintilla of foreign policy experience who buys that at all. If anything, he's made some wars worse. Some he's contending are over are not over. There's active fighting. Some he had absolutely nothing to do with. So at some level, this is like taking credit for the sun going up to this morning or this sunset tonight. It's just not Incredible.
solved. Some were going for 31 years, two of them, 31, think of it, 31 years. One was 36 years, one was 28 years. I ended 7 wars, and in all cases, they were raging with countless thousands of people being killed. This includes Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, the Congo and Rwanda, vicious, violent war that was, Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, and Armenia and Azerbaijan. It included all of them. No president or prime minister, and for that matter, no other country has ever done anything close to that.
I mean, here's the thing. At some level, you have to be consistent to your brand. Nobody thinks Donald Trump wakes up in the morning thinking, how can I end war? How can I bring peace to the world? How can I create more harmony? I mean, no one thinks that. I mean, just 2 days ago, he gave a speech at a memorial service saying, I hate my enemies. I don't want to be like these other people saying love your enemies and this, religion stuff. I hate my enemies. I want that to happen to him. So his whole deal of I'm Mr. Peacemaker, give me the Nobel Peace Prize is really inconsistent with his brand and all the other rhetoric he puts out on a much more frequent basis.
And I did it in just 7 months. It's never happened. There's never been anything like it. Very honored to have done it. It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them.
Okay, so saying the United Nations is not trying to help solve wars and end wars is it's an affront to everyone in the room. It's an insult. Because what Trump doesn't point out is he actually destroyed a lot of United Nations funding and efforts, and a lot of good people had their careers ended, and a lot of deaths around the world because of how he ended U.S. aid and a lot of other payments to the United Nations.
I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders, each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. The First Lady wasn't in great shape. She would have fallen, but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood.
So back to grievance. Apparently on the way up that day into the United Nations, the elevator broke. So typical Trump, he wants to complain about it. He wants to make himself a victim. The only thing I ever got from the United Nations is a broken elevator ride. Again, consistent with his brand, whining, complaining, but consistent with his brand is making about 60% of the audience not like you and not care about you. So that's a huge, huge problem.
And then a teleprompter.
Oh, and it got a laugh. And now he's talking about the teleprompter again. So again, with Trump, it's always about me, me, me. Forget all this talk about the world leaders and conflicts and wars and death. Let me talk about me and the fact that my teleprompter didn't work today at the UN and the elevator didn't work. And I actually had to walk up steps. Woe is me. I mean, he's going back to it again.
That didn't work. These are the 2 things I got from the United Nations. A bad.
Okay, so now he's off script. Now we see the real Trump come through. There's more movement. The head is moving, the body's moving. He looks comfortable. The natural cadence in his voice is coming. Now he sounds conversational. Now he sounds like he's riffing. So it's making for a more interesting speech. But again, it's all about me, 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 poor little me. One of the things I stress to all of my clients, whether they are the president of a country or a 23-year-old consultant trying to get a job interview and they're speaking at a job interview, is your audience doesn't care about you. Talk about what you're going to do for them. You'll always be better off. That will make them care about you. And Trump is always quick to talk about himself, any grievance, any slight, any problem. And here he is doing it again for the 3rd time, talking about the teleprompter. And my goodness, we're only 9 minutes into a 56-minute speech, and he's complaining about the fact that the elevator didn't work. Well, maybe the elevator doesn't work because some big donor country stopped paying billions of dollars to the UN for upkeep. Maybe.
Escalator and a bad teleprompter.
Sorry, that's now about the 4th if you're keeping score. The fourth reference to the bad teleprompter.
Thank you very much. And by the way, it's working now. Just went on. Thank you.
Okay, now the teleprompter's gone, and he's telling people. Again, it's not the end of the world. He does seem comfortable in front of people. He is sharing with them some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. Let's see if you can detect how different he sounds reading the teleprompter, because he does have a lot more experience reading a teleprompter than just looking at a fully prepared text of a speech.
I think I should just do it the other way. It's easy.
So here he is riffing again, and that is where he comes across his best. Let's see what he does for the speech.
Thank you very much. I didn't think of it at the time because I was too busy working to save millions of lives. That is the saving and stopping of these wars. But later I realized that the United Nations wasn't there for us. They weren't there. Thought of it really after the fact, not during these negotiations, which were not easy. That being the case, what is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it.
So you can see now he's coming across better than looking at a prepared text. He does have experience looking at different teleprompters. This is what we would call an executive teleprompter, where there's two pieces of glass, one to the left, one to the right. Your script is scrolling across. No one can see it from the other side. And so it creates the illusion of you're looking out to the audience. All politicians do it. I have this machine. I've trained people on how to use this machine. He's clearly better at it than head down reading a script. There's a little more nuance to his voice. He's varying the tone a little, the volume a little, pausing a little. It's also giving him the confidence to sort of have an aside here and there, because he can see the whole script is in front of him. Whereas if your head is down, buried in the script, sometimes it feels too awkward to come up, have an aside, and then find where you are in the script again. So it's in some ways easier for a speaker if they're already comfortable and familiar with teleprompter.
It has such tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action. Now, after ending all of these wars and also earlier.
So again, this is just more sort of cheap shots against the United Nations. And look, I get it. It's easy to bash the United Nations. And full disclosure, a couple disclosures for you. I've done a lot of work with many UN agencies, so you can factor that in to any perceived bias. But while you're doing that, I also have a conflict of interest to share with you. I've worked for the Trump Organization before because I was hired to do the media training for not one, but two Miss Universes back when Trump owned that pageant, and Miss Teen USA and that whole pageant world. So if you want to say I'm being too nice to Trump because of that conflict of interest, well, you're more than welcome to draw that conclusion. Let's watch more.
Negotiating the Abraham Accords, a very big thing for which our country received no credit, never receives credit.
The Abraham Accord, which is a very big thing. You really get the sense that he has no idea what it even is, because he doesn't care about it, but he's reading it from the speech.
One says that I should get the Nobel Peace Prize for each one of these achievements.
So he does something funny here. He'll say something, I should get the Nobel Peace Prize. He says it in a way where he's kind of winking to the audience, where he's saying it in a way, the Nobel Peace Prize. He says it in a way that sounds silly, like he's sort of mocking the idea, but he's also mocking people who think it's a silly idea. There's a lot of little meta communication, and he does that frequently. So it's sending mixed messages. He does seem like he's attacking people who don't want to give him the Nobel Peace Prize, but he's also acting like he kind of finds the whole thing silly. In his defense, again, I'm being fair here and objective. A case can be made that the Nobel Peace Prize, the Nobel Organization, did give a prize to Barack Obama prematurely, just because they thought he was cool and they liked the idea of someone like Barack Obama being president of the United States. So that is something that is a bone of contention with Trump and a lot of conservatives. And I will say there's some credibility to the argument that the Nobel Peace Prize was given too early to Barack Obama, and he's still resentful about it.
But for me, the real prize will be the sons and daughters who live to grow up with their mothers and fathers, because millions of people are no longer being killed in endless and unglorious wars. What I care about is not.
So this part just seems, almost comical. This reminds me of the time when, Trump is asked what his favorite Bible verse is, and he's says Colossians 8, or it says something ridiculous. It isn't how anyone pronounces it in the Bible. Here's a guy again who's unscripted. He says, I hate my opponent. I don't want good things to happen to them. Talking about world peace and kumbaya. Oh, he's just spending all of his time creating peace in the world. It just sounds comical, like he's doing almost a parody or a satire of what he thinks the UN wants to hear.
Winning prize is saving lives. We saved millions and millions of lives, 7 wars, and we have others that we're working on, and you know that. Many years ago, a very successful real estate developer in New York, known as Donald J. Trump, I bid on the renovation and rebuilding of this very United Nations complex. I remember it so well. I said at the time that I would do it for $500 million, rebuilding everything. Beautiful. I used to talk about, I'm going to give you marble floors. They're going to give you terrazzo. I'm going to give you the best of everything. You're going to have mahogany walls. They're going to give you plastic. But they decided to go in another direction, which was much more expensive at the time, and which actually produced a far inferior product.
So here he's nursing old grievances. He's here today with crises around the world going on, and he wants to relitigate something from 50 years ago where he didn't get a contract to make money on a building deal. So again, it just seems so wildly self-indulgent and the exact opposite of what people expect from a world leader.
And I realized that they did not know what they were doing when it came to construction, and that their building concepts were so wrong, and the product that they were proposing to build was so bad and so costly. It was going to cost them a fortune. And I said, and wait to see the overruns. Well, I turned out to be right. They had massive cost overruns, spent between $2 and $4 billion on the building, and did not even get the marble floors that I promised. You walk on terrazzo. Do you notice that? As far as I'm concerned, frankly, looking...
Again, there's people there worried about genocide going on in their own country. And he's talking about the fact that you don't have nice marble in the UN building and you're walking on terrazzo. And by the way, right behind him is beautiful marble. I've been right where he's standing. It's beautiful. And he's going on and on talking about building materials. So at least this, you could make the case he's back to sounding sincere. He does sincerely think about things like this, much more so than human suffering around the world.
At the building and getting stuck on the escalator.
Now he's talking the grievance again. So if you're keeping tabs, that's what? 4 references, complaints about the teleprompter, and that's about the third or fourth reference to how awful it was he got stuck on the elevator or the escalator going up to give the speech that day. Just horribly self-indulgent, everything about me.
Still haven't finished the job. They still haven't finished. That was years ago. The project was so corrupt that Congress actually asked me to testify before them on the tremendous waste of money, because it turned out they had no idea what it was, but they knew it was anywhere between $2 and $4 billion as opposed to $500 million with a guarantee. But they had no idea, and I said it cost much more than $5 billion. Unfortunately, many things in the United Nations are happening just like that, but on an even much bigger scale, much bigger. Very sad to see whether the UN can manage.
Sad, one of the president's favorite words.
To play a productive role. I've come here today to offer the hand of American leadership and friendship to any nation in this assembly that is willing to join us in forging a safer, more prosperous world.
So this is really more the rhetoric you would typically hear in a presidential address at the United Nations. He's sounding conciliatory. He says he wants to work with people, extending an olive branch to different countries around the world. So this, you could argue, is a little more in the traditional statesman-like realm of rhetoric.
And it's a world that we'll be much happier with. A dramatically better future is within our reach. But to get there, we must reject the failed approaches of past.
The other thing he's doing well, again, I'm being fair. He is doing a relatively good job of giving equal time to the two different teleprompters. Again, if you're not familiar with this style of teleprompter, it's 2 slabs of glass. They're about this big, and they're on both sides. So it's not looking straight at the teleprompter the way I am right now. And I'm not reading a teleprompter now, but this is where mine is. And some people only stay focused on one teleprompter. And that makes them look stiff and frozen, less comfortable. He's going back and forth in a way that's somewhat natural. Some people read a sentence or two from here, then they go for a sentence or two to here, then they go back, and it's too rhythmic, it's too consistent. He's pretty good at going from one, using that, pausing, going to another. So he's sort of natural and seamless in the way he is using his two teleprompter screens. I'll give him credit for that.
And work together to confront some of the greatest threats in history. There is no more serious danger to our planet today than the most powerful.
So you can see one of the teleprompters right here. Again, these haven't really changed in style since, I believe, the late 50s. I know I bought one in the 90s, and you get two of them. So there's one here and one probably further to his left out of the range of the camera. Those listening to the podcast, I'm showing the video of the president speaking, looking at the teleprompter glass.
Destructive weapons ever devised by man, of which the United States, as you know, has many. Just as I did in my first term, I've made containing these threats a top priority, starting with the nation of Iran. My position is very simple. The world's #1 sponsor of terror can never be allowed to possess the most dangerous weapon. That's why shortly after taking office, I sent the so-called Supreme Leader a letter making a generous offer. I extended a pledge of full cooperation in exchange for a suspension of Iran's nuclear program. The regime's answer was to continue their constant threats to their neighbors, U.S. interests throughout the region, and some great countries that are right nearby. Today, many of Iran's former military commanders, in fact, I can say almost all of them, are no longer with us. They're dead. And 3 months ago, in Operation Midnight Hammer, 7 American B-2 bombers dropped the 14 30,000-pound each bombs on Iran's key nuclear facility.
You won't believe it, but I literally
totally
wear this cargo,
obliterating everything. No other country on earth could have done what we did. No other country has the equipment to do what we did. We have the greatest weapons on earth. We hate to use them, but we did something that 22...
Of course, what the president's forgetting to say is that another administration had negotiated a deal with Iran, and he ripped it up when he went into office the first time, basically because he didn't want to admit anyone could ever have a good idea other than himself. So that's sort of conveniently neglected in the speech, but very few people in that audience are unaware of that fact.
2 years people wanted to do. With Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity demolished, I immediately brokered an end to the 12-day war, as it's called, between Israel and Iran, with both sides agreeing to fight no longer. As everyone knows, I have also been deeply engaged in seeking a ceasefire in Gaza. Get that done together.
The other thing he does, it's a little bit odd, that doesn't make him look that comfortable. When he is reading a teleprompter, he tends to squint. Now, I don't know if that's because it's having a harder time seeing it. Perhaps they don't have the font as large as it needs to be. Now, he doesn't like to wear glasses, as a lot of people don't. But if I take my glasses off, I would have to make my font much larger on my teleprompter in order to read it. But keeping the squint makes him look less comfortable than when he is not reading. And then his eyes can widen, they can have normal movement and normal levels of expressiveness. That's part of the problem with reading. Where I give him credit, though, is he's not freezing his head. If you squint and you freeze your head, you look really nervous. If you're moving your head a little and going from this screen to that screen, you look fairly comfortable, but not completely natural as you would if you were not squinting.
Unfortunately, Hamas has repeatedly rejected reasonable offers to make peace. We can't forget October 7th, can we? Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities. It would be a reward for these horrible atrocities.
So again, let me be fair. Some of you are going to say I'm too pro-Trump, too anti-Trump, too whatever. I'm calling it as I see it. I do think that so far he is coming across fairly measured. You could certainly quibble with some of his facts. You could certainly quibble with sort of the self-serving nature of continuing to talk about the teleprompter not working and the escalator not working. But he still comes across as fairly measured, rational. He does not seem like someone who's too old who can't deliver a speech. and he is going to be 80 relatively soon. He will be, if he leaves office, the oldest president ever by the time he leaves office. I think that he comes across as sober, as having relatively good energy, even though the speech is delivered at a somewhat somber tone. But there's nothing crazy yet. Again, I'm watching this fresh set of eyes, just as you are, if you haven't seen it yet. I've not seen this speech. I'm analyzing this in real time.
Including October 7th, even while they refuse to release the hostages or accept a ceasefire. Instead of giving to Hamas and giving so much, because they've taken so much, they have taken so much. This could have been solved so long ago. But instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now. Just release the hostages.
Okay, so getting applause, and I give him credit. He just did something very smart there. He waited for the applause. He didn't step on the applause. And that's when he stopped to get a drink of water. And no matter how accomplished you are as a speaker, how many speeches you give, it's only natural to get dry. You see professional comedians, you see Bill Maher, others, when they're up on stage, Jerry Seinfeld, they're drinking water throughout. Because when you're giving a speech, you're projecting a little louder than you are in normal conversation. That dries the airways out and can make your lips go dry, your mouth go, your throat go dry. And what you don't want to do is what Marco Rubio did a number of years ago when he was giving a reaction to the State of the Union. He got so thirsty so quickly, he was sort of seemingly every 10 seconds. Trump did not make that mistake. He realized that when there was applause going on, cameras would be looking at the rest of the audience, getting reactions, as you see right here. So that was a skillful maneuver on his point.
Thank you. As we have got to come together, and we will come together.
Again, he is a skilled performer. He's a skilled entertainer, and I don't mean that in any negative way. He let people finish their applause. He didn't try to talk over them. He didn't try to quickly get to the next point. He let people give him approval, which is what applause is. And nervous speakers don't do that. Nervous speakers tend to think, how can I hurry up and finish this thing? How can I get out of here and finish this? He's in no rush, which is a good thing.
Got to get it done. We have to stop the war in Gaza immediately. We have to stop it to get it done. We have to negotiate immediately, have to negotiate peace. We got to get the hostages back. We want all 20 back. We don't want 2 and 4. As you know, I got, along with Steve Witkoff and others that helped us, Marco Rubio, we got most of them back. We were involved in all of them. But I always said the last 20 are going to be the hardest. Exactly what happened. We have to get them back.
So I always said the last 20 will be so he knew in advance that it would come down to 20. Again, it's one thing to put a positive spin on things, but when you're constantly painting yourself as the most brilliant person in the history of the world, it just rubs a lot of people the wrong way. Some people like the bluster, but to the UN crowd, there's plenty of people in that building with big egos. They got to be leaders of their own country, sometimes in difficult ways. So when they hear someone else blustering about how they're smarter than everyone else and they saw things ahead of everyone else, it doesn't ring true.
Now, we don't want to get back 2, then another 2, and then 1, and then 3, have this process. No, we want them all back, and we want the actually 38 dead bodies back too. Those parents came to me and they want them back, and they want them back very quickly and very badly, as though they were alive. They want them. They want them every bit as much as if their son or daughter were alive. I've also been working relentlessly.
So that part, I don't know if that was scripted or not, because it did sound genuine. It didn't sound like something a speechwriter would write. He does show or sound like he's showing some compassion for parents who've had children who were hostages and were killed.
The killing in Ukraine, I thought that would be, of the 7 wars that I stopped, I thought that would be the easiest because of my relationship with President Putin, which had always been a good one. I thought that was going to be the easiest one. But in war, you never know what's going to happen. There are always lots of surprises, both good and bad. Everyone thought Russia would.
So this is interesting to me and a lot of people, this section here, because it is extraordinarily rare for Donald Trump to ever admit that he miscalculated. I mean, his whole shtick has always been, I'm the greatest, I'm the smartest, I never fail, I'm always perfect. Everyone else is always wrong. Anything that's bad, because someone else did horrible things. I've never made a negative assessment in my life. Here, he's basically admitting he thought it was easy and it was hard. So that to me is an interesting thing. That shows a slightly, at least a smidge of reflectiveness in the part of the president that we don't normally see. It certainly doesn't get much news coverage on a regular basis.
Win this war in 3 days, but it didn't work out that way. It was supposed to be just a quick little skirmish. It's not making Russia look good. It's making them look bad. No matter what happens from here on out, this was something that should have taken.
Now you can see, if you look at your screen, apologies to our podcast audience, you can see very clearly the two blades of glass, or the two, they're roughly 2 feet tall and maybe 18 to 20 inches long, and then about 14 inches across. And they're angled and they're on a post. So you can see them there if you are looking on a video screen.
A matter of days, certainly less than a week, and they've been fighting for 3.5 years, killing anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 young soldiers, mostly soldiers, on both sides, every single week, from 5,000 to 7,000 dead young people, and some in cities, much smaller numbers, where rockets shot, where drones are dropped. This war would never have started if I were president. This was a war that should have never happened. It shows you what leadership is, what bad leadership can do to a country. Look what happened to the United States.
So again, when he says a war wouldn't have started if he had been president, nobody believes that. It's simply not credible. All sorts of horrible things can happen regardless who is president of the United States. And to just cherry pick and say bad things happen, it's not my fault. Good things happen, I get all the credit. You could say a lot of politicians do that, but not to this level.
And look where we are right now in just a short period of time. The only question now is how many more lives will be needlessly lost on both sides. China and India are the primary funders of the ongoing war by continuing to purchase Russian oil.
So he does still sound like he is reading the teleprompter. We're hearing full sentences, complete sentences. We are not hearing word salads. We're not hearing bizarre fragments. We're not hearing odd, illogical riffs. So we're still in a part of the speech that is written, and he's following the script.
But inexcusably, even NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I found out about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy. Think of it. They're funding the war against themselves. Who the hell ever heard of that one? In the event that Russia is not ready to make a deal.
Who the hell ever heard of that one? So that's an aside. I'm not sure if that was written in the speech, but that's conversational. That brings Trump back to his more interesting, engaging style. Because he has sounded somber and, frankly, by his standards, very boring in this speech so far. But he is a comfortable enough performer that even when he's following a prepared speech, a teleprompter, he could put in these little asides, these little emotional moments to put some sparkle into it.
To end the war, then, the United States is fully prepared to impose a very strong round of powerful tariffs, which would stop the bloodshed, I believe, very quickly. But for those tariffs to be effective, European nations, all of you are gathered here right now, would have to join us in adopting the exact same measures. I mean, you're much closer to this. We have an ocean in between. You're right there. And Europe has to step it up. They can't be doing what they're doing. They're buying oil and gas from Russia while they're fighting Russia. It's embarrassing to them. And it was very embarrassing to them when I found out about it, I can tell you that. They have to immediately cease all energy purchases from Russia. Otherwise, we're all wasting a lot of time. So I'm ready to discuss this. We're going to discuss it today with the European nations, all gathered here.
So these are some contentious issues. You can make the case that energy, oil is fungible. It goes on international markets. It's very hard to say who's buying what from whom sometimes. And it's a complicated issue because, you don't want to be funding your enemy. On the other hand, do you want your own citizens freezing to death? It's not an easy issue.
They're thrilled to hear me speak about it, but that's the way it is. I like to keep my mind and speak the truth. As we seek to reduce the threat of dangerous weapons today, I'm also calling on every nation to join us in ending the development of biological weapons once and for all. And biological is terrible, and nuclear is even beyond, and we include nuclear in that. We want to have a cessation of the development of nuclear weapons. We know, and I get to view it all the time. Sir, would you like to see? And I look at weapons.
So there he's doing something interesting. He's doing a voice. He's bringing in dialogue. That makes any speech more interesting. So you notice how he changed his posture. Sir, would you like to see? He's acting out the character of a staffer talking to him. And that's something all good speakers do. It's bringing a little story element, bringing in a character, bringing in a voice, bringing in some emotion. This is more what we're used to seeing from him. Again, by Trump's standards so far, this has been an extraordinarily somber, staid affair. Let's keep watching.
That is so powerful that we just can't ever use them. If we ever use them, the world literally might come to an end. There would be no United Nations to be talking about. There would be no nothing. Just a few years ago, reckless experiments overseas gave us a devastating global pandemic. Yet despite that worldwide catastrophe, many countries are continuing extremely risky research into bioweapons and man-made pathogens. This is unbelievably dangerous. To prevent potential disasters, I'm announcing.
So I would again say at this point in Trump's defense, he's not sounding or looking like a crazy person. There are many speeches he gives where the commentariat weigh in and say he sounds like he's deranged. He sounds like he has Alzheimer's. He sounds like he's losing it. He sounds like he has dementia. He doesn't sound like a 79-year-old man. He sounds like a 179-year-old man. I think a fair-minded observer so far watching him would certainly quibble about some factual errors, but the way he sounds coherent. He is speaking in a rational way. He does not in any way sound or look or seem unhinged at this point.
Today that my administration will lead an international effort to enforce biological weapons convention, which is going to be meeting with the top leaders of the world by pioneering an AI verification system that everyone can trust. Hopefully the UN can play a constructive role, and it will also be one of the early projects under AI. Let's see how good it is, because a lot of people are saying it could be one of the great things ever. But
that's one of his signature rhetorical curlicues, flourishes. A lot of people are saying, and he does it to great comedic effect sometimes. A lot of people are saying I'm the best president ever. A lot of people are saying I'm the best looking. It's something where what he really means is I want to say something and I want to make myself look good. So I'll use the social proof of saying other people, but I don't say who says it. It does sort of, for regular Trump followers and observers, it can kind of bring a smile to your face because sometimes it's used to buttress the most absurd claims ever. And other times, as in this case, it just can kind of make sense.
Also can be dangerous, but it can be put to tremendous use and tremendous good. And this would be an example of that. Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the number one political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migrations. Uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years of the incompetent Biden administration. And now we have it stopped, totally stopped.
So, a lot of people could look at that and say there's so many elements of demagoguery there, I don't even know where to start. So it's not quite as stark as he's pointed to say. There's zero now ever coming across. No credible person says that. But he's oversimplifying things, saying how awful it is for the UN to give food and aid to migrants. Well, is the United Nations just supposed to say, look, your country imploded, now stay there and die? That's just not a very philanthropic principle to articulate. It's pretty hard for people to do. It's very easy in the abstract. If you're sitting in your chair in a suburban or rural America somewhere, and you've never seen anyone fleeing a country, it's pretty easy to just say that. But when you're actually there on the ground and you're trying to help people, it's very hard to say, just starve to death. You didn't win the lottery when it comes to living in a stable country. So you can't leave your country and you'll just have to stay here and die. That's not a tenable argument.
They're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance. In the United States,
no serious person thinks the UN is trying to create invasions. But when you have a situation like Syria, where you've got an entire society crumbling and destroying and people have to leave or they will starve to death and die, millions of people are going to leave that country. They can't just be teleported into the skies. They can't grow fins and gills and live in the ocean. They have to go somewhere. And anyone who suggests it's an easy solution is not paying attention.
Reject the idea that mass numbers of people from foreign lands can be permitted to travel halfway around the world, trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause unmitigated crime, and deplete our social safety net. We have reasserted that America belongs.
So again, I'm going to make some enemies here, but I will go ahead and call it like I see it. Donald Trump is pretty good at reading a teleprompter because he's stumbling very little. It's just very easy when you're reading to trip on a word or you miss it or you think there's a period there, but it's not and it's awkward. He's doing a good job reading the teleprompter. He doesn't sound like a professional newscaster, but he's not trying to sound like that. His voice is a little low and flat and monotone and boring compared to when he's just riffing. But overall, he is doing an excellent job of reading his teleprompter and doing it in a way without stumbling, tripping, or botching words. So I give him credit for that.
To the American people, and I encourage all countries to take their own stand in defense of their citizens as well. You have to do that because I see it. I'm not mentioning names. I see it. Call every single one of them out. You're destroying your country. They're being destroyed. Europe is in serious trouble. They've been invaded by a force of illegal aliens like nobody's ever seen before. Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe.
So he did just stumble over the word alien there, but to his credit, again, we're 26 minutes in. You could arguably make the case he mispronounced one word, but that's really the first overt stumble. And there are times when Trump does seem to stumble, does seem to slur his speech. There's been speculation that he's had loose dental work at one point and that might have caused it. But we are coming up to the half-hour mark, and I'm not detecting slurs, mangling of words, or any problems getting through his prepared text.
Nobody is ever, and nobody's doing anything to change it, to get him out. It's not sustainable. And because they choose to be politically correct, they're doing just absolutely nothing about it. And I have to say, I look at London where you have a terrible mayor, terrible mayor, and it's been so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that.
So now he's just absolutely espousing nonsense and demagoguery. And for the president of a country to be weighing in on the political merits of a mayor of another country, just on its face, that is inappropriate to the people in this audience. And it just seems like, again, he's trying to control everything, meddle in everything, and score cheap political points and go after anyone who ever at some point hasn't praised him.
The immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained. What makes the world so beautiful is that each country is unique. But to stay this way, every sovereign nation must have the right to control their own borders. You have the right to control your borders, as we do now, and to limit the sheer...
So there was repetition. Typically, people don't write out repetition in a teleprompter speech. So my guess is he put that in himself for emphasis. Again, competent speakers are afraid to not just follow the teleprompter word for word, but to stop and restate a phrase to give it added emphasis.
Your numbers of migrants entering their countries and paid for by the people of that nation that were there and that built that particular nation at the time. They put their blood, sweat.
One of the things that is making Trump sort of look and sound sleepier is he does have his hands on the lectern. And Trump has been often mocked for his use of hands and having awkward hand movement. But I would argue that's one of his strengths. When you're moving your hands, you come across more comfortable, confident, relaxed, authoritative. It moves your body. It tends to make your voice have more range and energy in it. And in this speech, he's behind the lectern and his hands are on it the whole time. Now, I can only guess it's perhaps because he's still scarred about the teleprompter not working and he wants to keep his hands close on the written speech if he has to quickly go down and find where he is in the speech again. But that is making him less animated, less energetic. So my advice to you is if you have a lectern in front of you, don't touch it. Your hands should move when you speak if you want to come across as comfortable and as confident and as relaxed as possible.
Tears, money into that country, and now they're being ruined. Proud nations must be allowed to protect their communities and prevent their societies from being overwhelmed by people they have never seen before with different customs, religion, different everything. Where migrants have violated laws, lodged false asylum claims, or claimed refugee status for illegitimate reasons, they should in many cases be immediately sent home. And while we will always have a big heart for places and people that are struggling and truly compassionate, answers will...
I'm sorry, but when Trump says we'll always have a big heart and compassionate for people in need, it does come across as silly because it's the exact opposite of his brand.
Be given. We have to solve the problem and we have to solve it in their countries, not create new problems in our countries. And we are very helpful to a lot of countries that are just not able to send their people anymore. They used to send them to us in caravans of 25, 30,000 people each. These massive caravans of people pouring into our country, totally unchecked and unvetted. Not anymore. According to the Council of Europe, in 2024, almost 50% of inmates in German prisons were foreign nationals or migrants. In Austria, the number was 53%. People in prisons were from places that weren't from where they are now. In Greece, the number was 54%. And in Switzerland, beautiful Switzerland, 72% of people in prison.
So now he's getting back to sort of more of his normal style. Come to Switzerland, beautiful Switzerland, is one of his rhetorical flourishes where he will say a word and then he'll stop, reflect on it, and say something that comes to him that reminds him of that. You know, the late, great, blah, blah, blah. And it strikes some people as comical, but it also helps him sort of slow things down, reestablish momentum, exert a little personality, and come across as, in some ways, more gracious. He's saying something beautiful, beautiful Switzerland. I don't think that was in the written speech on the teleprompter. Once again, I think he's feeling more comfortable now and saying what pops into his mind, not just reading the teleprompter.
Are from outside of Switzerland. When your prisons are filled with so-called asylum seekers who repaid kindness, and that's what they did. They repaid kindness with crime. It's time to end the failed experiment.
So when you use a phrase like so-called asylum seekers, it really rubs a lot of people the wrong way in the UN community because very few people get up and say, you know what, I want to flee my country and take what I have in a little bag, leave all my friends, family, businesses, just because it's fun and everything is great in my country, but I just would like to go on a vacation to the United. That's not how people think. People flee their own countries because they fear death. That is why they flee, and that is why they seek asylum, and that is why the United Nations says that people deserve the right to claim asylum.
Of open borders, you have to end it now. See, I can tell you, I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell.
I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell. Okay, we're 29 minutes, 15 seconds in. So now we're hearing stuff that really sounds more like typical Trump. To say, I'm really good at this stuff. No one thinks that. Your countries are going to hell. What kind of a bizarre, wacko statement is that? It's bizarre at many, many levels. Let's see where he goes from here.
In America, we've taken bold action, swiftly shut down uncontrolled migration. Once we started detaining and deporting everyone who crossed the border and removing illegal aliens from the United States, they simply stopped coming. They're not coming anymore. We're getting a lot of credit, but they're not.
Now we're bringing hand motion in. This part makes him look more comfortable, but he's also doing something a moment ago where his read, he was kind of stuck on one thing, and he was kind of doing this thing that was awkward. That seemed unnatural, but I give him credit. They're not coming anymore. He brought his hands in, that brought his voice up, that made him more animated and made him come across much better.
This was a humanitarian act for all involved, because on the trips up, thousands of people a week.
So there you can clearly see him grabbing the lectern. I do not recommend this. There's no reason to grab the lectern unless you think you're going to fall down. And he does not appear to be in ill health or as if he would fall down. Far better to do what he did a moment ago, which is to move his hands to amplify his message.
We're dying. Women were being raped. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Raped, horribly beaten, raped. On the trip up, the journey up, it was a long walk. It was a long, arduous journey, indeed. And it was also a historic victory against human trafficking throughout the region. What we did was a victory, and we saved so many lives of people that wouldn't make the journey. That journey was loaded up with death. Dead bodies all along the roads of jungles. To get up, they go through jungles, they go through areas so hot, couldn't breathe. They were dying of suffocation, areas so hot that you couldn't breathe. Dead bodies all over. By them not coming, we're saving tremendous numbers of lives. The people have done a fantastic job.
I mean, in some ways, this is illogical. He's making a case against his own point. Yeah, people were going through these struggles through jungles around dead bodies because they were so desperate to get out of the repressive regimes, the tyranny, the slaughter, the civil wars that they were running away from. That's an extra point showing how motivated people are, how they actually have a good reason to want to flee their country. Certainly, fair-minded people can have honest debates about what the proper level of migration is and bringing in refugees to a country. But it's not served well by dishonest debate points like this.
But doing what they did, and the American public agrees with it. I mean, I was very proud to see this morning I have the highest poll numbers I've ever had. Part of it is because of what we.
So again, this is just an absolute lie, although I guess, polls can vary. So if 19 polls show him at an all-time low and one poll showed it at an all-time high, I guess he could say, well, I just saw a poll, I'm at an all-time high. By most accounts, Trump has approval rating about 42%, some as low as 37%, which would make him one of the least popular presidents in the history of the nation, certainly at this point of his term.
Done on the border. I guess the other part is what we've done on the economy. Joe Biden's policies empowered murderous gangs, human smugglers, child traffickers, drug cartels, prisoners from all over the world. The previous administration also lost nearly 300,000 children. Think of that. They lost more than 300,000 children, little children, who were trafficked into the United States on the Biden watch, many of whom have been raped, exploited, and abused, and sold. Nobody talks about that. The fake news doesn't write about it, with many others, young children who are missing or dead.
So again, part of leadership is talking about the future. What is your plan for the future? You're speaking to an audience, you're trying to influence the audience to take some action in the future to make the world a better place, to advance policies. To continue beating up on an opponent who's exited the political scene nationally, internationally. We're not going to be hearing from Joe Biden again other than a book occasionally. To continue beating up on him just seems malicious, gratuitous, and irrelevant.
And we found a lot of these children and we're sending them back, and we've been sending them back to their parents. They said, nobody knows who they are. They said, where do you come from? And they'll give us a country and we'll find out and we'll figure it out and we'll bring them back to their homes. And the mother and father rush to the door and their tears in their eyes. They can't believe that they're seeing their son or daughter, their little son or daughter again. We've done almost 30,000 of them so far. Any system that results in the mass trafficking of children is inherently evil. Yet that is exactly what the globalist migration agenda has done, and it's what it's all about. In America, though.
So he's trying to make the case that the globalist migration agenda is somehow promoting child slavery and tearing children away from their families. I mean, that's just so patently stupid and obvious falsehood. It does make your head spin a little.
Those days, as you know, are over. The Trump administration is working, and we are continuing to work to track down the villains that are causing this problem. And also, as I said, to get back the 30,000 we've already returned. Now I think we're going to have another. We're going to find a lot. You're not going to find all of them. 300, more than 300,000. They're lost or they're dead. They're lost or they're dead because of the animals.
So here it just seems like he's riffing. I mean, parts of this could be on a teleprompter, but he's repeating himself. He's doing asides that don't sound like something that was written in advance. And it's starting to sound a little odd. Again, to his defense, he does not sound like a madman. He doesn't sound crazy. He's not frothing at the mouth, as we're often told he does. He is following sort of some ways a standard linear speech that was written and now delivered. But it's starting to veer off into a few oddities.
That did this. To protect our citizens, I've also designated multiple savage drug cartels as forest tech. You see this, and you see it happening right before your eyes. Let's put it this way. People don't like taking big loads of drugs in boats anymore. There aren't too many boats that are traveling on the seas by Venezuela. They tend not to want to travel very quickly anymore.
Okay, so now we're getting to some real Trump. This doesn't sound like it was scripted. He's basically being the tough guy. Nobody likes to take boats from Venezuela anymore. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'll shoot you and kill you or have you destroyed. So this does seem to be something that is genuinely a part of what he believes, something he's proud of. And now you're feeling more emotion coming through. And I would suspect that he's deviated from the talking points because he's speaking about this in a more personal manner.
And we virtually stopped drugs coming into our country by sea. We call them the water drugs. They kill hundreds of thousands of people. I've also designated multiple savage drug cartels as far as foreign terrorist organizations, along with two bloodthirsty transnational gangs, probably the worst gangs anywhere in the world, MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua is from Venezuela, by the way. Such organizations torture, maim, mutilate, and murder with impunity. They're the enemies of all humanity. This reason, we've recently begun using the supreme power of the United States military to destroy.
So he does sound almost tired here. It's a bit flat, a bit boring. Part of it is, I think this is not the kind of speech he likes to do. He wants to be able to talk about what is making him angry and annoyed and frustrated and feeling like he's put upon. That's what he likes talking about. So talking about helping people in misery around the world is just not ever going to be a subject that animates him. But he is making it worse by anchoring his arms and his hands on this left. That does not work well for him.
Venezuela terrorist trafficking networks led by Nicolas Maduro. To every terrorist thug smuggling poisonous drugs into the United States of America, please be warned that we will blow you out of existence. That's what we're doing. We have no choice.
We will blow you out of existence. That is different rhetoric from what international leaders who respect international law would typically say, but that is totally consistent with the Trump brand.
Can't let it happen. They're destroying. I believe we lost 300,000 people last year to drugs, 300,000, fentanyl and other drugs. Each boat that we sink carries drugs that would kill more than 25,000 Americans. We will not let that happen. Energy is another area where the United States is now thriving like never before. We're getting rid of the falsely named renewables. By the way,
so saying something is a renewable form of energy is false. That just sounds like politically correct nonsense.
For a joke, they don't work. They're too expensive. They're not strong enough to fire up the plants that you need to make your country great. The wind doesn't blow. Those big windmills are so pathetic and so bad, so expensive to operate, and they have to be rebuilt all the time. They start to rust and rot. Most expensive energy ever conceived, and it's actually energy. You're supposed to make money with energy, not lose money. You lose money, the governments have to subsidize. You can't put it.
So here he's just clearly spewing nonsense. No one who follows the energy world thinks that renewables is a waste of time or that it's not real. Trump has shown he, time after time, hates things like windmill energy because it ruined his view at one of his resorts. It's not, his opinions are not based on science. It's more about, in manly times, men dug oil. And they didn't deal with this sissy solar power stuff. It's about emotions and the past rather than science in the future.
Them out without massive subsidies. And most of them are built in China, and I give China a lot of credit. They build them, but they very few wind farms. So why is it that they build them and they send them all over the world, but they barely use them?
So again, he's got this personal grievance against wind farms, even though they've been proven to be wildly successful. He just doesn't like looks.
You know what they use? Coal, they use gas, they use almost anything, but they don't like wind. But they sure as hell like selling the windmills. Europe.
He does that thing to give emphasis, where he says, they don't like wind. He does that extra emphasis on certain words that at some level is comical. At some level, it's kind of a signal to his audience. Oh, I'm going to go back to one of my golden oldies. He loves bashing wind power, in part because he knows it really angers people who are concerned about global warming and climate change. He likes to stick it to his enemies because he's fought people who tried to get rid of wind farms for blocking views at his resorts. And he knows, I'm going to go back to one of my old hobby horses. So that's a normal thing in any one of his speeches.
On the other hand, there's a long way to go with many countries being on the brink of destruction because of the green energy agenda. And I give a lot of credit to Germany. Germany was being led down a very sick path, both on immigration, by the way, and on energy. They were going green and they were going bankrupt. And the new leadership came in and they went.
So saying a country is going bankrupt because they're investing in green energy is just an absolute absurdity.
Back to where they were with fossil fuel and with nuclear. It's good. It's now safe. You can do it properly. But they went back to where they were.
So now he's adding in more asides, like nuclear, which is good. It's now safe. That wasn't in his script. You could tell he's bringing back his conversational asides, being able to think in front of people. This is what he traditionally does well and has made him an engaging speaker.
They opened up a lot of different plants, energy producing plants, and they're doing well. I give Germany a lot of credit for that. They've said this is a disaster, what's happening. They were going all green. All green is all bankrupt.
All green is all bankrupt. So here, this is where he seemed like he's going off script and he's just venting because now he's got his hobby horse. Oh, green energy's bad, and I'm going to relish that. And he's bringing in these conversational asides, but it does bring more energy to his voice. It makes it more interesting to listen to. It doesn't make him sound as tired, because there have been parts of this speech already where I felt like he's not sleepy the way Joe Biden was, but he seemed bored. And now he doesn't sound bored.
That's what it represents. And it's not politically correct. I'll be very badly criticized for saying it, but I'm here to tell the truth. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I'm in New York.
I'm here to tell the truth. Doesn't matter to me. Not politically correct. So now we're getting back to core themes of Trump. And notice how the body language, I don't care. I'm here to tell the truth, not politically good. So he's saying things that are purely conversational, asides. I don't think that was in the script. And it's animating it. His body's moving, his head's moving more, his voice, tone change, volume, pitch, everything changes more, and it brought him back to life.
New York City, I'm feeling a lot safer. Crime, we're getting crime down. And by the way, speaking of crime, Washington, D.C. was the crime capital of America. Now it's a totally, after 12 days.
Simply not true. Jackson, Mississippi is the crime capital of America. Its murder rate is about 3 times higher than Washington, D.C., but it's not politically correct to say that because Mississippi is run by a Republican.
It's a totally safe city. Everyone's going out to dinner. They're going out to restaurants. Your wife can walk down.
Totally safe? I mean, crime was already going down in Washington, D.C. Crime was much lower than when, for example, I lived there in Washington 30-some years ago, and it really was a pretty dangerous place. So crime has been going down in Washington. It's much safer than many, many, many cities in Republican MAGA-led states. but he's not addressing that
the
honestly.
middle of the street. With or without you, nothing's going to happen. My people have done a fantastic job. And yes, I called in the National Guard, and the National Guard took care of business, and they weren't politically correct, took care of business. We got 1,700 career criminals out, brought them back to where they came from.
So it is interesting. That's at least the third or fourth time he has taken great pride in saying he did something not politically correct. That's at this point now kind of an old term. It's been around with us for more than 30 years. And it's often surpassed by the new phrase, which is, oh, it's woke. Oh, I know they weren't woke. Woke has become a new umbrella term here in the United States of just saying, if I don't like it and I'm a conservative, I'll just say that thing is woke. Therefore, if I'm anti-woke, it's a good thing. So it's kind of supplanted the use of politically correct. It's just to say everything is woke. Interestingly, he's not talking that way. He's sort of using older language in this speech.
Countries where they came from or put them in jails. Washington, D.C. is now a totally safe city again, and I welcome you to come. In fact, we'll have dinner together at a local restaurant, and we'll...
See, that's one of these Trump things that he can do. I invite you to dinner. We'll have dinner at a local restaurant. It's just a silly thing for a president to say to the whole world watching, or even the hundreds and hundreds of people there at the UN. It's especially odd given he's only been to dinner once in the last year, or the last 4 years in Washington, D.C. And when he did, he was screamed at and called Hitler and every other name in the book. And it was a horrible embarrassment to be out at a local restaurant. So it's almost like he's making fun of that, mocking, like, oh, you know what I'm really talking about, but I'm going to make it sound like it was another win for me. Part of his humor, because he knows he can get under the skin of Democrats, liberals, progressives, many members of the mainstream media by saying things just like this.
Be able to walk. We don't have to go by an armor-plated vehicle. We'll walk right over there from the White House. They've given up their powerful edge, a lot of the countries that we're talking about in oil and gas, such as essentially closing the great North Sea oil. Oh, the North Sea, I know it so well. Aberdeen was the oil capital of Europe, and there's tremendous oil that hasn't been found in the North Sea. Tremendous oil. I was with the prime minister I respect and like a lot, and I said, you're sitting with the greatest asset. They essentially closed it by making it so highly taxed that no developer, no oil company can go there. They have tremendous oil left, and more importantly, they have tremendous oil that hasn't even been found yet. And what a tremendous asset for the United Kingdom. And I hope the Prime Minister is listening, because I told it to him 3 days in a row. That's all he heard. North Sea oil, North Sea, because I want to see them do well. I want to stop seeing them ruining that beautiful Scottish, English countryside with...
Again, he's talking up his own book. He's talking up the fact that he happens to have a resort there in Scotland, and it's like he just can't keep from being self-promotional for things that have nothing to do with the public weal.
Windmills, massive solar panels that go 7 miles by 7 miles, taking away farmland. But we're not letting this happen in America.
Again, with the windmills, he just can't give up anything that has ever been perceived to harm him economically or aesthetically in any way. It really seems petty on the one hand. On the other hand, it's very consistent with who he is. He certainly does not seem like he's lost a step in how he speaks in the last 10 years. There is a school, let me address this. There is a school of thought. I hear it frequently, and you might as well. There is a school of thought among some who do not like Trump, who claim that he doesn't speak the way he used to. He rambles, he's incoherent, he clearly has Alzheimer's or dementia, and he's just not all there. I'm sorry to disappoint you if you're in that camp, but I'm not seeing anything in this speech that gives credibility to that view. He is speaking in a way that, again, factually, you could quibble with virtually everything out of his mouth. But the way he sounds is articulate, there's a logic and a rationale in his worldview that he's presenting. You can disagree with the whole worldview, as many do, but the way he's presenting it is coherent within his worldview and those of his followers. Where I do think people are onto something is Donald Trump does speak very differently than he did 50 years ago, 40 years ago, and Oprah was interviewing him 35 years ago. He was much more respectful and polite in interviews, deferential. And he was, by his own admission, he wanted to seem mainstream, respectable. And at some point he realized, if I say more outrageous things, if I use simpler language, call somebody a fat pig, I'll actually get more respect from people who want to help me and care about me. So I'm not one of those who thinks that based on how Trump is speaking today, that you can make a case that he has Alzheimer's, dementia, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not making a diagnosis either way, but based on how he's speaking, I'm not seeing any troubles that would suggest that is a logical conclusion.
1982, the executive director of the United Nations Environmental Program predicted that by the year 2000, climate change would cause a global catastrophe. He said that it will be irreversible, as any nuclear holocaust would be. This is what they said at the United Nations. What happened? Here we are. Another UN official stated in 1989 that within a decade entire...
Okay, so here Trump is on a little more solid ground. Now he's clearly in the camp of global warming is essentially a hoax. He did show that someone at the United Nations, someone in the 20th century said by the year 2000, global warming will be too far gone and a problem we can't solve. And it's true. There's always a whole range of predictions. That is the nature of science. You never get an emerging problem and see 1,000 scientists and there be emerging consistent. You have different people putting out different theories and they are tested, and then you hold them accountable looking at data. Climate change is no different. But did he perhaps cherry pick one that helped his case, that was factually correct? I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt on that one.
Our nation would be wiped off the map by global warming. Not happening. You know, it used to be global cooling. If you look back.
Not happening. That's more the typical Trump. It's that increase in volume, the punctuation change, the volume change, the energy change, the sarcasm that's coming in. So this is more of how Trump normally speaks, and it's typically what his audiences do find engaging about him.
Years ago in the 1920s and the 1930s, they said, global cooling will kill the world. We have to do something. Then they said global warming will kill the world. But then it started getting cooler. So now they could just call it climate change, because that way they can't. It's climate change. Because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens.
So this is an absolute distortion of history. He's trying to rewrite history because there's overwhelming consensus. There's never 100% consensus on anything in the scientific world. But there is, in fact, overwhelming consensus among reputable, credentialed scientists that global warming is real, it is a problem, and that humans burning carbon are making the problem worse. To say you don't agree with that is really, you can disagree on the solutions, but you can't really disagree with that fact any more than you can disagree with the theory of gravity or the theory that the universe does not circle around the earth circles around the sun.
Climate change, it's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world. In my climate change, no matter what happens, you're involved. No more global warming, no more global cooling. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reason, were wrong. They were made by stupid people that have cost their countries fortunes and given those same countries no chance.
So this is more back to Trump. This is more away from traditional United Nations head of state and more back to the real Donald Trump, calling people stupid. Donald Trump's world, if you analyze data and come to a conclusion different from him, you're not a serious person who analyze data differently, you're stupid. This is the sort of thing that makes people think he's a bully, a thug, the sort of person who temperamentally should never be given any position of power, much less the most powerful job in the world.
Success. If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail. And I'm really good at...
So scam, a con, this is the sort of vitriolic hyperbole and demagoguery that people associate with Donald Trump. And it's one of the reasons why the United States is held, frankly, in such low esteem by a lot of other leaders and people around the world when they hear language like this.
You know, they actually said during the campaign, they had a hat, the best-selling hat. Trump was right about everything. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but it's true.
Okay, this does not sound like what was prepared by layer after layer of speechwriter in the White House. This sounds more like Trump deciding, okay, I did the formal stuff. Now I get to say what I really think. Because look at the animation in his face, the energy level, the volume. I don't say this in a braggadocious way. That's a phrase he uses often, especially when he starts bragging. When he gets into this comic book world, this Marvel universe where everyone is 100% good, 100% evil, 100% vile or all-knowing, all good, all a genius, like with him being the premier superhero. We're sort of back now to where we see Trump in a normal president. Him.
I've been right about everything.
I've been right about everything. The emphasis, the pause, the softening of the voice. This is not him reading a teleprompter. This is him sharing what he really thinks. The t-shirt says, Trump is right about everything. I'm right about everything. Me, 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 me. This is what people think. He's an extreme narcissist to the point of, having the exact sort of personality who should not have any control over any government lever. But now he's coming across and speaking with more energy, more passion, more engagement, more animation.
And I'm telling you that if you don't get away from the green energy scam, your country is going.
So this is about the fifth time. It's scam, con, scam, fraud. This is the vitriol he uses to paint 99% of scientists in the world.
To fail. And if you don't stop people that you've never seen before, that you have nothing in common with, your country is going to fail. I'm the president of the United States, but I worry about Europe. I love Europe. I love the people of Europe. And I hate to see it being devastated by energy and immigration. This double-tailed monster destroys everything in its wake.
So monster, villain, love, hate. These are not the typical scam, con. These are not the typical words that world leaders use. And Trump, to his credit, doesn't try to paint himself as a typical world leader. He is skilled with the ability to communicate to average people by using the simplest words possible. He paints in black and white. And to his enemies, that is his worst trait. To his fans, that is one of his greatest strengths. So he's very consistent in his brand here and how he's communicating.
Cannot let that happen any longer. You're doing it because you want to be nice, you want to be politically correct, and you're destroying.
So again, he's using, this is about the sixth time we've heard this phrase, politically correct, which is just a word saying you're doing something I don't like, and rather than make the argument or case as to why it's a bad policy, I'll just take the lazy way out and call it politically correct, or I'll call it woke, although interestingly, I don't think we've heard him use the word woke yet in this speech.
Heritage. They must take control strongly and immediately of the unmitigated immigration disaster and the fake energy catastrophe.
Fake energy. He loves that word fake. He's already mentioned fake news, talking about fake catastrophe. So he loves that word fake because it's another sort of comic book character word. Real fake, good, bad, good, evil, black, white. He loves the word fake. It's on his brand. His fans like it.
Before it's too late, the carbon footprint is a hoax made up by...
Carbon footprint is a hoax. Again, hoax, fake, scam, anything he doesn't like. He just figures if he uses enough criticism and repeats it again and again, it will stick. And in truth, that has worked for him throughout his career.
People with evil intention, and they're heading down a path.
Evil intentions. Again, this is the hallmark of a demagogue, and is one reason why so many people are uncomfortable with Trump. You can never simply have an honest disagreement with Trump. If you have a disagreement, you're now evil. I'm not summarizing. He literally just called people evil if they disagree with him.
Of total destruction. The carbon footprint was a big, big thing a few years ago. I remember hearing about the carbon footprint, and then President Obama.
The carbon footprint. Notice that change of voice. He's bringing in sort of that comedic instinct, that television performer. He's saying something once, then restating it in a different language, a different volume, different facial expression. It makes it interesting. It makes it captivating.
Obama would get into Air Force One, a massive Boeing 747, and not a new one, an old one with old engines that spew everything into the atmosphere. He'd talk about the carbon footprint. We must do so. Then he'd get in and he'd fly from Washington to Hawaii to play a round of golf. And then he'd get back onto that big, beautiful plane and he'd fly back and they talk about, again, global warming. And
so again, this is the sort of thing where you expect it from Trump, but it's just absolute cheap demagoguery. Is anyone really expecting the president of the United States to never, ever travel, never have downtime, never play golf? No, he's trying to score cheap political points. I mean, here's a guy who's had his own private plane years and decades before ever entering public life. He doesn't care at all about wasting energy. And to suggest that President Obama is a hypocrite because he wanted to go to his home state where he grew up or play golf. And by the way, he played a lot less golf than Donald Trump ever did. And I don't begrudge Trump for playing golf. Where I begrudge him is criticizing other people for doing the very same thing he does 10 times more.
The carbon footprint, it's a con job at extreme cost and expense. Europe.
Again, how many times have we heard con job now? Something he doesn't like, it's automatically a con, it's a scam, it's a fraud, it's fake. And he has found throughout his career, if you just attack, you will convince, maybe not everybody, but a certain percentage of the people will buy your argument with enough repetition. And he's clearly being very repetitive on these issues.
Reduced its own carbon footprint by 37%. Think of that. Congratulations, Europe. Great job. Cost yourself a lot of jobs, a lot of factories closed, but you reduced the carbon footprint by 37%. However, for all of that sacrifice and much more, it's been totally wiped out and then some by a global increase of 54%. Much of it coming from China and other countries that are thriving around China, which now produces more CO2 than all the other developed nations in the world. So all of these countries are working so hard on the carbon footprint, which is nonsense, by the way. It's nonsense.
Okay, now we're actually seeing the normal hand movement of Donald Trump. It's all nonsense. So this is more the normal Trump of what we're used to seeing when he's not using a teleprompter and when he's not using a script. The hands become very animated. There are times when they don't look completely natural, but I would argue they work for him because they bring in movement, they bring in range, they alter his voice in a way that makes him more conversational. Let's see if he does more of that.
You know, it's interesting. In the United States, we have still radicalized environmentalists, and they want the factories to stop. Everything should stop. No more cows. We don't want cows anymore. I guess they want to kill all the cows. They want to do things that are just unbelievable.
Okay, so now we're seeing the normal riffs. They want to kill cows. They don't like cows. I guess they don't like cows. It's unbelievable. And see how his hands are moving. He's freeing himself up. This is what people who like Donald Trump like about him speaking. It's not for everyone. It's not classic oratorical finery, but it does make him seem very passionate, very genuine, and makes him seem not like a politician, but someone who's simply passionate. Let's watch more.
You have it too. But you know, we have a border strong and we have a shape. And that
look at the animation there, the movement. He's now seeing it in his own mind.
Shape doesn't just go straight up. That shape is amorphic when it comes to the atmosphere. And if we had the most clean air, and I think we do, we have very clean air. We have the cleanest air we've had in many, many years.
So now we're hearing his normal rhetorical style. He says a word, plays on a word, an aside on a word, comes back to it, shows some emotion, and then goes to something else. This is more of what we typically see. So now we're getting to some, I won't say good stuff, but we're getting to more classic Trump right now. We've been at this a while, but we still have more to come. I'm TJ Walker. You're watching Filtered. We'll be back in just a moment after this commercial word. Filtered is brought to you by the following. You don't need a new degree. You don't need another expensive coach. You need the right communication habits, and I'll teach them to you in just a few minutes a day. At MediaTrainingWorldwide.com, I've created the most comprehensive library of online communication and personal development courses anywhere. You'll learn public speaking, media training, persuasion, executive presence, and more. These are the same methods I've taught to world leaders, but now they're affordable and accessible to everyone. You can start for free and upgrade anytime. Go now to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill and it's trainable. Most people can't afford a full-time coach, and even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40 plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question. Get feedback on your elevator pitch. Rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it. Want to become a better speaker, leader, or communicator? Start with the TJ Walker Success Library. It's 5 of my most practical books, covering everything from public speaking to media interviews and persuasive messaging, all for only $9.95. I've trained presidents and Fortune 500 CEOs, and now you can get the same wisdom in a fast, affordable format. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download your copies instantly. Okay, we are back, and we are going to go into more detail on everything Trump has to say. Let's take a look.
The problem is that other countries, like China, which has air that's a little bit rough, it blows. And no matter what you're doing,
So again, we're seeing a completely different Trump than what we saw earlier. Problem with China, their air, it blows. I mean, he's clearly in the moment thinking and sharing his thoughts, whereas before he was reading a teleprompter. Now, for whatever reason, he's highly animated. It's like it's a completely different person. This is why people like Trump as a speaker, for those who like Trump. It's this sort of animation and passion he's bringing to the subject.
down here, the air up here tends to get very dirty because it comes in from other countries where their air isn't so clean. And the environmentalists refuse to acknowledge. Same thing with garbage. In Asia, they dump much of their garbage right into the ocean. And over about a 1 week and 2 week journey, it flows.
Look at that hand motion. 1 week, 2 weeks, it flows. Because he's clearly passionate about this subject, and he's clearly in the moment. There's not a notation on his teleprompter saying, move your hand and do this. This is something that's now emanating from him.
Right past Los Angeles, you've seen it. Massive amounts of garbage, almost too much to do anything about, flowing past.
I want to pay attention to what he said. Almost too much to do anything about it. The head move, the eyebrows moving, the expression of, oh, this is overwhelming. So he's now communicating with every part of his voice, his body, his face, his hands. This is more of what made Donald Trump in terms of his speaking style. Not reading the teleprompter, but speaking this way.
Los Angeles, past San Francisco, and then somebody will get in trouble because he dropped a cigarette on the beach. The whole thing crazy. The primary effect of these.
The whole thing is crazy. Slowing down, pausing after each word, lowering the volume is a great way of essentially underlining a point, bringing out emphasis, bringing in his emotional perspective on the issue. This is great communication. Now, you might not like what he's communicated, and you might not agree with it, but this is powerful communication in the way that the first 3/4 of his speech was just sort of reading a laundry list, where you got the sense that he didn't care about it. Why should anyone else?
Total green energy policies has not been to help the environment, but to redistribute manufacturing and industrial activity from developed countries that follow the insane rules that are put down to polluting countries.
Again, insane. Just the use of the word insane. It's not reasonable policy. Officials can do different calculations and come up with a different best estimate. No, it's anybody who disagrees with me is insane. It's the constant vilification of anyone who disagrees that has helped him politically, but it's also why he is one of the least popular presidents in the history of our nation. And on the world stage, he's certainly one of the least popular presidents ever because of language like this, because it's considered cheap demagoguery.
That break the rules and are making a fortune. They're making a fortune.
They're making a fortune. They are making a fortune. The use of repetition is powerful. Martin Luther King Jr. did it. The comedian Tim Dillon does it very well. I'm not saying Donald Trump is the next Martin Luther King Jr. Maybe he's more like the next Tim Dillon, but it's a rhetorical device that makes you confident, makes you easy to understand, gives emphasis to your key points, He wasn't doing it earlier, reading the teleprompter. Now he is.
Electricity bills are now 4 to 5 times more expensive than those in China and 2 to 3 times higher than the United States. And our bills are coming way down. You probably see that our gasoline prices are way down. You know, we have an expression, drill, baby, drill. And that's what we're doing. We're going to be much lower in a year from now. But they've come way down over the last year. As a result,
So more of these asides, drill, baby. Oh, yeah, we have this expression, drill, baby, drill. So now we're more of this mishmash, random, non-linear thinking coming out of him to make point. He's making a point, but then he goes off on all these sides, and he likes to hit these hot buttons, these rhetorical buttons that have given him good feedback in the past. Oh, I know if I say drill, baby, drill, I'll have a bunch of people in the audience sort of drooling and excited and happy and get some applause. So he's always going back to various applause lines. I mean, the only surprising thing about this speech so far is he hasn't talked about Barack Obama's birth certificate, but who knows, maybe that will still be in there.
air conditioner is like very uncommon to see one in some of these countries because the electric cost is so high. So while the U.S. has approximately 1,300 heat-related deaths annually, that's a lot, Europe loses more than 175,000 people to heat deaths because the costs are so expensive you can't turn on an air conditioner. What is that all about? That's not Europe. That's not the Europe that I love and know. All in the name of pretending to stop the global warming hoax. The entire
Again, a hoax to simply say, I, Donald Trump, with my, business degree from University of Pennsylvania, which maybe I had someone else take the SAT for, I know more about science than the collective wisdom than all scientists, all Nobel Prize winning scientists and climatologists. That's just strains credulity. Remember, this is the guy who wants to give you bleach during COVID, and he's supposed to be an expert on science. Again, no serious, credible person who isn't fully in the MAGA tank, the MAGA camp, believes this to be true.
globalist concept of asking successful industrialized nations to inflict pain on themselves and radically disrupt their entire societies must be rejected completely and totally, and it must be immediate. That's why in America I withdrew from the fake Paris Climate Accord.
So you might not agree with everything in the Paris Accord, but it's not fake. And this is one aspect where, right-wing authoritarians are on the rise around the world. We're seeing them around Europe. We're seeing them in places like Turkey and Eastern Europe, Western Europe. What is different about the United States right is the Republican Party is really the only major Republican Party, or only right of center party in the world of a major democracy that does not fundamentally accept the science on climate change. We are a true aberration on that. And this is the sort of thing that conservatives in Australia and Canada and other places see this and they think, what in the world is this guy talking about? It does seem utterly bizarre.
Where, by the way, America was paying so much more than every country. Others weren't paying. China didn't have to pay until 2030. Russia was given an old standard that was easy to meet, 1990 standard. But for the United States, we're supposed to pay like $1 trillion. And I said, this is another scam. The fact is, the United States has been taken advantage of by the world for many, many years, but not any longer, as you probably noted.
It's coming back to one of his familiar themes. The United States is being taken advantage of is a constant theme of Trump that nobody else in the world believes that. Nobody there in that room at the United Nations feels like the United States is being taken advantage of. If the United States were constantly taking advantage, let's use a little logic here. If the United States were being taken advantage of constantly, wouldn't we be worse off than most countries? Wouldn't people want to be leaving the United States to go and migrate, legally or illegally, to China or Russia or these other? Well, no, we were not seeing Americans trying to migrate illegally and crash the borders of other countries because it's an absolute fiction that somehow the United States is being taken advantage of unfairly by other countries.
I unleashed massive energy production and signed historic executive orders to hunt for oil, but we don't have to do much hunting because we have the most oil of any nation anywhere, oil and gas in the world. And if you add coal, we have the most most of any nation in the world. Clean, I call it clean, beautiful coal. You can do things today with coal that you couldn't have done 10 years ago, 15 years. So I have a little standing order in the White House. Never use the word coal, only use the words clean, beautiful coal. Sounds much better, doesn't it?
So another sort of typical rhetorical flourish of Trump. You couldn't have a tax bill. It has to be the big, beautiful bill. You can't say coal. You have to say clean, beautiful coal. He does this in part because he knows that among his enemies, centrist, mainstream, moderates, Democrats, liberals, people who believe in science, he knows this drives them insane. And he absolutely loves driving his critics insane. And statements like that do it. That is classic Trump rhetoric.
We stand ready to provide any country with abundant, affordable energy supplies if you need them, when most of you do. We're proudly exporting energy all over the world. We're now the largest exporter. In the United States, we want trade and robust commerce with all nations, everybody. We want to help nations. We're going to help nations, but it must also be fair and reciprocal. The challenge with trade is much the same with climate. The countries that follow the rules, all their factories are plundered. It's really sad to watch. They've been broken by countries that broke the rules. That's why the United States is now applying tariffs to other countries, and much as these tariffs were for many years applied to us, uncontrollably applied to us. We've used tariffs as a defense mechanism under the Trump administration.
So interestingly, he's really now talking about tariffs. He hasn't talked about them much in this speech. And this is arguably the audience that cares about it more than anything because it affects them. The tariffs are on these other countries. And it may in fact be because he's seeing the polls. He's seeing how his own citizens in America hate these tariffs. He's also seeing from a lot of economists predictions that it's going to hurt the economy, perhaps put us in recession. He knows if that happens, if the United States is in recession going into the 2026 elections, it's going to be toast for his party and therefore his presidency. So this may be why we're seeing such a late emergence on this issue of tariffs in this speech.
Including my first term, where hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs were taken in. And by the way, we had the lowest inflation, and now we have very low inflation. The only thing different is that we have hundreds of billions of dollars flowing into our country. But this is how we will ensure that the system works for everyone and is sustainable into the future. We're also using tariffs to defend our sovereignty and security throughout the world, including against nations that have taken advantage of former U.S. administration for decades, including the most corrupt, incompetent administration in history, the sleepy Joe Biden.
Okay, corrupt, incompetent, name calling like you're 8 years old on the schoolyard, sleepy Joe Biden. This is sort of classic Trump, and a lot of his supporters do, in fact, like in a venue like the United Nations, it is just viewed as absolutely contemptible and sullying the environment there and sullying public discourse. Again, no one expects you to go out of your way to constantly praise a former political opponent, but to just constantly make cheap shots and grade school name calling. It doesn't seem beneath the dignity of the President of the United States. It seems beneath the dignity of an 18-year-old who works at a gas station. It's just not how adults are supposed to communicate. It's not how anyone wants their kids to learn how to communicate. But this is Trump. It doesn't seem to hurt him. And it's very much on brand, and he seems very comfortable with it.
Brazil now faces major tariffs in response to its unprecedented efforts to interfere in the rights and freedoms of our American citizens and others, with censorship, repression, weaponization, judicial corruption, and targeting of political critics in the United States. I have a little problem saying this because I must tell you, I was walking in and the leader...
Okay, now he seems like he's off script. See how the speed changed, the animation changed. And this is particularly interesting to this audience because here you have something truly unprecedented. The President of the United States is trying to punish economically another country, not because they're somehow harming us economically, but because he likes the fact that a former president acted like a criminal, was found guilty as a criminal for trying to destroy the democracy and stay in office. And he wants to punish that country for having the rule of law apply. He's attacking them for being democratic. That's just never happened before in the history of the country. And it's viewed as an utterly bizarre, despicable act by every single person in the United Nations. I feel very strongly that that's not an overstatement. It's truly bizarre. And it's in part, he's sending a message to people around the world. If you are a thug, if you are a dictator, if you're Putin, if you're Orban, if you are someone who does not believe in democracy and wants tight control, if you're a North Korean dictator, I like you guys. If you're like the guy in Brazil who didn't want to leave office and wants to thumb his nose at democracy and the rule of law, I like you. And therefore, I'm going to be against anyone fighting you. That's a message. And it's a message that is one reason why the United States has such low esteem by a lot of countries, or at least this administration does around the world today.
Brazil was walking out. We saw him and I saw him, he saw me, and we embraced. And then I'm saying, can you believe I'm going to be saying this in just 2 minutes? But we actually agreed that we would meet next week.
So there he is talking about his great affinity for fellow thugs and criminals and felons.
We didn't have much time to talk, like about 20 seconds. They were in retrospect, I'm glad I waited because this thing didn't work out too well. But we did talk, a good talk, and we agreed to meet next week if that's of interest. But he seemed like a very nice man, actually.
So here he is, he's being totally conversational, totally sort of riffing, thinking you hear the animation back in his voice. You see the movement in his face, his body, his hands, his arms.
He liked me, I liked him. But if you, and I only do business with people I like.
So here's where he sounds like the mobster. I like him, he likes me. I only do business with people I like. Well, he likes Putin. He likes the North Korean dictator. He doesn't like people like Angela Merkel. And he doesn't like popularly elected presidents and prime ministers of countries. Doesn't like them, likes dictators. And he likes to do business with people he likes. So put it together.
I don't like him. When I don't like him, I don't like him. But we had, at least for about 39 seconds, we had excellent chemistry.
Okay, that's not in his script. He's not reading that from the telephone. When I don't like him, I don't like him. Great chemistry for 39 seconds. What does that mean? It's bizarre.
It's But also in the past, Brazil, I believe, unfairly tariffed our nation. But now, because of our tariffs, we are hitting them back. We're hitting them back very hard. As president, I will always defend our national sovereignty and the rights of American citizens. So I'm very sorry to say that Brazil is doing poorly and will continue to do poorly. They can only do well when they're working with us. Without us, they will fail, just as others have failed. It's true.
And this seems like he's back on the teleprompter again. It's coming across awkward, stiff, flat. He's holding his head in an awkward way as if he's looking at one prompter.
Next year, the United States will celebrate the 250th anniversary of our glorious independence, a testament.
Now he's doing that thing he does sometimes when he's reading a speech. And next year we'll be celebrating that glorious 200-year, blah, 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 blah. He does that thing where there's like a little wiggle where he's like, oh, I'm trying to be official now and be serious. And it's kind of bizarre, but it is one of those things that is hallmark.
To enduring power and American freedom and spirit, we will also be proudly hosting the 2026 FIFA World Cup and shortly thereafter 2028.
And now you see kind of that squint where he's squinting to read the teleprompter again.
Olympics going to be very exciting. I hope you all come. I hope that countless people from all over the globe will take part of these will be great celebrations of liberty and human achievement.
A little stumble there, but to be honest with you, we're almost an hour in. He's had relatively few stumbles. I've seen 30-year-old news anchors have more stumbles with a teleprompter in 30 minutes.
And together we all can rejoice in the miracles of history that began in July 4th, 1776, when we founded the Light All Nation. It's something really that an amazing thing came out of that date. It's called the United States of America. In honor of this momentous anniversary, I hope that all countries who find inspiration in our example will join us, renewing our commitment, value, and those values really that we hold so dear together. Let us defend free speech, free expression. Let us protect religious liberty, including for the most persecuted religion on the planet today. It's called Christianity. And let us safeguard our...
So again, to this crowd, that sounds bizarre because it's very easy to have your entire village slaughtered if you're a Muslim, or several other languages that get prosecuted a lot more than Christians. But it's once again Trump playing the victim card. While he and his ilk like to talk about the cult of victimization and how the left wants everyone to be a victim, nobody talks more about their victim status more than Donald Trump, and he's doing it again.
Sovereignty and cherished qualities have made each of our nations special, incredible, and extraordinary. In closing, I just want to repeat that immigration and the high cost of so-called green renewable energy is destroying a large part of the free world and a large part of our planet.
So he's coming back to his big themes, and first big theme, global warming and climate change is a hoax, and anyone who talks about green energy is creating a fraud. That's first big thing he wants to really re-emphasize.
Countries that cherish freedom are fading fast because of their policies on these two subjects. You need strong borders and traditional energy sources if you're going to be great again.
So you want more coal. New energy, no good. Old energy like coal, good. And countries got to keep foreigners out.
You have come from north or south, east or west, near or far. Every leader in this beautiful hall today represents a rich culture, a noble history, and a proud heritage that makes each nation majestic and unique, unlike anything else in human history or any other place on the face of the earth. From London to Lima, from Rome to Athens, from Paris to Seoul, from Cairo to Tokyo and Amsterdam to right here in New York City, we stand on the shoulders of the leaders and legends, generals and giants, heroes and titans who won and built our beloved nation, all of our with their own courage, strength, spirit, and skill. Our ancestors climbed mountains, conquered oceans, crossed deserts, and trekked over wide open plains. They charged into thunderous battle, plunged into grave dangers, and they were soldiers.
So this is all boilerplate he's reading off of his teleprompter at this point. You can tell he's not very excited about it.
Farmers, workers, warriors, explorers, and patriots. They built towns into cities, tribes into kingdoms, ideas into industries, small islands into mighty empires. You're a part of all of that. They were champions for their people who never gave up and who never, ever gave in. Their values defined our national identity. Their vision forged our magnificent destiny. Everybody in this room is a part of it in your own way. Each of us inherits the deeds and the myths, the triumphs, the legacies of our own heroes and founders who so bravely showed us the way. Our ancestors gave everything for homelands they defended, pride, sweat, with blood, with life, and with death. Now the righteous task of protecting the nations that they built belongs to each and every one of us. So together, let us uphold our sacred duty to our people and to our citizens. Let us protect their borders, ensure their safety, preserve their culture, treasure, and tradition, and fight for their precious dreams and their cherished freedoms. And in friendship, really a beautiful vision. Let us all work together to build a bright, beautiful planet, a planet that we all share, a planet of peace and a world that is richer, better, and more beautiful than ever before. That can happen. It will happen. It will happen, and I hope it can happen and start right now, right at this moment. We'll turn it around. We're going to make our countries better, safe, more beautiful. We're going to take care of our people. Thank you very much. It's been an honor. God bless the nations of the world. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, we finished, folks. If you're here with me, I appreciate you spending this much time with me going in depth. So what did we really learn about this speech from Trump? In some ways, it was classic Trump, the black and the white. Everyone who agrees with him is great. Anyone who doesn't agree with him is a fraud, a con, a criminal, a fool, a villain. So we do, as we normally do with any Trump speech, hear words, language not commonly associated with world leaders or with speeches at such an august arena as the United Nations in New York City. But I have to say he was by Trump standards, he was very measured. Let me give you my overall assessment, and I'm going to make everyone unhappy, unfortunately. For those of you who despise Trump so much, looking for signals in this speech, evidence that he is descending into madness, that he is descending into dementia, Alzheimer's, mental deficiency, losing a step, I'm sorry, I don't think this speech gave you any ammunition. I don't think he's lost a step, I'm talking rhetorically speaking, from where he was 10 years ago. Does he speak differently than he did 40 years ago? Yes. But you could argue the way he speaks now is more effective in helping him build a political base. Very different from just being a real estate developer who wants to be respectable to Democratic politicians in New York trying to get tax abatements. So I don't think he's showing any signs of slippage. Now, having said that, I'm going to anger some people on the other side. He does come across as absolutely deranged and as someone who doesn't care about facts, someone who's a liar, someone who embodies the absolute worst qualities that any fair-minded person would want in a leader. He shows no compassion for anyone other than himself. He spent a lot more time talking about the fact that he didn't have an escalator to get to the floor where his speech was, and the fact that his teleprompter didn't work perfectly, than he did talking about anyone who's poor or needy or homeless or hungry in America or any place else in the world. So it's the same old Donald Trump of everything's about me, 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 me. I know everything. He literally said Trump was right about everything, and that's the favorite T-shirt or baseball cap people want is Trump was right about everything. So he continues to do all the things that outrage his opponents, that make many fair-minded people believe he's unfit for any office. And he's shown no growth, put it that way. You don't expect at this stage, there's not a lot of 79-year-old men or women who suddenly show a lot of growth. No one was expecting that. But some people were expecting that looking at an entire speech of his would show further signs of either derangement or political genius that is somehow covered up by the mainstream media. And I just went through that with a finer tooth comb than I've seen anyone do with any Trump speech. And I didn't detect that. I'm not detecting declining mental capacity or just basic rhetorical skills. And as I pointed out at the beginning, reading from a teleprompter or a written speech is never one of the strong areas for him. He's strongest when he's just riffing. And he did that some in this speech. But for those who think he's going to win a Nobel Peace Prize, this speech did not help him at all.